When we focus on types of diagrams, there are numerous types under which we can explain the various types of diagram. The first category that we can explain the diagrams is the category where we explain line graph. It could be in the form of bar graph. So we have examples of line graph, we have examples of bar graph, we have examples of pie diagram. So those are some of the common types of diagrams that are explained. Then besides that, we also have sometimes the flowcharts that are there. We explain diagrams through thematic maps. When we talk about thematic maps, these are the maps of any geographical region, and on that geographical region you try to explain the development. So it could be either through a dot representation, a choropleth representation, or a isopleth representation. We'll talk about all those in detail in separate section, but for now what the idea is, under type of diagrams we can say there are one dimensional, two-dimensional or three-dimensional diagram. One-dimensional diagrams are simple diagrams which are in the form of line graph. They could be in the form of bar graph, histograms. So those are common example of one-dimensional. Under two-dimensional, we usually have the pie diagrams that are explained, and under three-dimensional, cube and sphere are the common cases that are seen. But for now, we would understand the very basic ones, and that is the line graph. Now for a line graph, let's say across the various years, we have the profit values that are given. So we start plotting the profit values one by one. So let's say in 1998, the profit was 0.5. So we mark the profit at a region of 0.5. That was between 0 to 2. So under a line graph, what we first do is we take the x-axis and the y-axis. X-axis is the horizontal axis and y-axis is the vertical axis. On the vertical axis, we take the profit. On the horizontal axis, we take the year. So it is year versus profit graph that would be plotted. Now we see the values of profit ranges from somewhere between 0 to the highest value, which is around 14. So we would divide our graph in the values of 0 to 14. So we divide it in a gap of 2 to 2 each, and that would show us the vertical segregations. And for the year, we of course have 1998, 2002, so all the years in the gap of 2. But the interesting phenomena here is for 2012, we have one value which is negative. So what happens here is the graph goes below the 0 mark. Now if we talk about the gradients, in a xy coordinate, we have plus plus. Then here x would be minus but y would be plus. Here both would be minus, and here the x would be plus but the y would be minus. So what would happen is you would have plus minus gradients that would be seen, and here the profit would be in the lower gradient that would be seen. So we understand the line graph. So time series we usually see on a x-axis. Whenever we are plotting a line graph, we see a time series on a x-axis and quantity on a y-axis. So that is the basis that we need to understand for a line graph. The next is the polygraph. So under polygraph, we draw the line graphs, but they represent multiple values. So for example, we see the number of students enrolled in various schools, and we have the marking for various schools. So school C is yellow dotted line. Okay, so the values is 10,080, 1650. So these are the values that are represented for the school C, and we can see the last curve shows the school C values, and then we have the values for school A, B and C that are there on the same graph. Now when we are representing multiple lines, what is taken into account? First of all, we can represent all the three lines by different pattern. It could vary in terms of thickness of the line. It could vary in terms of continuity of the line. So there could be a broken line, dotted line. It could be a thick line, small line. And the benefit of this is it gives an immediate comparison. So when I say immediate comparison, what do I mean? Obviously, if I ask you which school has highest number of students? Just by seeing the graph, you would say obviously school A has highest number of students, and therefore, as we said, it gives us immediate comparison. So this school has the highest enrollment, which school has the lowest enrollment? Again, we can see. Now, again I ask you a different question. In which year the enrollment for the school A declined but school B and C increased? So for 2016 we can see enrollment increased for school C, enrollment increased for school B, but it was only for school A that enrollment declined. And when you are doing your further researches, then you can go forward and see why did it happen in such a fashion. And the reverse phenomena occurred in 2017, where the enrollment for school C and B declined, but the enrollment for school A increased, probably because they put in a lot of effort for marketing, advertisements, or bringing in the students, just because the fact that they witnessed a decline in the previous year where other schools witnessed an increase. So might be they improved their faculty, they improved their standard of education, they improved their co-curricular activities. There could be n number of reasons cited to it, but that's what you do actually in a research later on. You try to understand and comprehend the data, why it actually happens in such a fashion. So the next interesting graph that we talk about is a simple bar graph. So we have the test and the marks obtained by various students. Now what we do is simply we mark the marks of each of the students. So on the x-axis we take the number of the test. So the test number 1 to 10 has been mentioned on x-axis. On the y-axis what we do is we plot the marks of the student. So when we are plotting the marks, our range is 45 to 88, which is the highest, and we see a simple curve. So we can simply say the student received the highest marks in the last test, and the performance was gradually increasing in the last 4 tests. Now again we can have the reasons why it happened. So it could be one of the reasons that since the same student is appearing for the test again and again, there is more practice that has been witnessed by the students, so better results, better outcomes. Now some of the important things that you should take into account while doing a simple bar diagram. First, the width of each of the bars should be same. The distance between two bars should again be same. So the distance that I am maintaining here and the distance that is maintained in each of the bar should be same. The width of each of the bar, which is this width, should again be the same width for each of the cases. And then we also say that sometimes we can make the bars much more attractive by shading or coloring, or simply we could simply draw the sketch or the outline, and if you have time you can shade it when you are drawing it actually. Okay, so that is a simple bar graph. Sometimes there is a combination of facts that are given. For example, let's say there is a combination of fact that is given for the students who are enrolled in class 10th versus the total number of students in the school. Now, if I want to plot both of these together on the same graph, what I would do is use a line and bar graph. So with the bar graph, I am explaining the number of students that are present in class 10th. And that is plotted onto the y-axis, but onto the left side of the y-axis, and onto the right side of the bar axis what I do is I plot the total number of students. So this line shows me the total number of students, and this curve shows me the students in class 10th. Okay, so with this value I would do a bar graph, and the class 10th students would be represented through a bar graph. The total students I am representing through a line graph. So what I am doing is I am using simultaneously a bar graph as well as a line graph in the same diagram, and this helps me solve the problem in a single chart. So my representation becomes much more simpler. Now again, when I have multiple data, I can use either a multiple bar graph or a compound bar graph. There is a little difference between the two. Under a compound bar graph, what we do is within the same bar we separate sections, Under multiple bar, we draw different bars for different sections. So let's say here we are talking about a multiple bar diagram. I have the number of students as boys, girls and total students. So what I do is I plot the number of boys with pink, girls with blue and total students with green, and I have a multiple bar graph. Again the concept remains same. I have x-axis where I say the year is mentioned, y-axis where I am mentioning the number of enrollment or the number of students who are enrolling for the given school. Again, if I look onto the graph, I can see the girls' enrollment has increased for 2020. However, the number of boys enrolled for this school has significantly decreased. The scenario was not the same in 2019, where the disparity was very high between the enrollment of boys and girls for this school. So again, if you are part of the research, you can show different bases on which this categorization could be done. Another important thing to understand is multiple bar is usually used when you are trying to compare rural urban population, you are trying to compare, let's say, means of irrigation. So irrigation through tube well, irrigation through canal, or you are trying to show male female population, boys and girls in a given school or a college, the enrollments that are seen. So those are some of the places where you actually use a multiple bar diagram. Coming on to next is a compound bar diagram. Under a compound bar diagram, what we do, as we mentioned, we try to have the same height which shows the total number of enrollment, and then we divide this total number of enrollment under different streams. So let's say students in class 12th are enrolled for science, commerce and arts. Now those who are enrolled for science, commerce and arts, what would happen is, for science, let's say school A has 250 students, for commerce 190 students and for arts 120 students. So what we do is, we draw a compound bar graph which shows the total number of enrollment of students, which is 250 plus 190 plus 120. So it is 0, 14, 6, 1. And then you have 5. So total 560 students that are enrolled in this school, and of which 250 are for sciences, 190 are for commerce and the remaining for arts. And similarly I plot for school B and C. Now what happens here, I am grouping the students in one set of variable, that is the total number of students, and from that total I am segregating the streams under which the students would be there. So what I am doing is, I am simply dividing that and showing different variables through this method. The next important way is explaining through a pie diagram. Pie diagram is an interesting way of explanation because it is where it is also known as a divided circle diagram. Now this divided circle, as you can see simply from the diagram itself, it is a circle that is divided into various parts and therefore a divided circle that is seen. Now I have, let's say, the result of the elections where 3 of the party and other candidates and the percentage of seats they have obtained. So what I do is, I need to find out what would be the area covered under the pie diagram. So what we do is, for a pie diagram, we know the complete circle is how much? It is 360 degrees. Now if 62% of the seats are won by party A, how many degrees it would be? So it would be 62 divided by 100, since it's percentage, multiplied by 360 degrees, and it gives me around 223.2 degrees, and that is what I plot. So it is 180. So if I divide this whole circle exactly into half, that is 180, I need to go beyond 180. So this whole pink region would be the region of party A, and then you would have party B, C and others that would be there, and for each of those I find out the ratio. So 21 divided by 100 into 360, which equates to around 75 degrees and so on. So this is 75.5 degrees around. So this region would be around 39 degrees and this region would be around 21 degrees. So exact values you would have to calculate, and therefore a pie diagram would be represented. Usually whenever we are representing a pie diagram, what is very important, we do not start with a bigger angle. The reason being, if I start with a bigger angle and I move towards the smaller angle, there would be a lot of error. As in this case, there is 223.2 degrees and then you would have 75.6 degrees. If I am not able to exactly locate that 0.6, 0.2, it would lead to a cumulative error, and this others would go a very small region. It would become minute, and that is because of the error that is generated. So what we do as a rule under pie diagram is we start with the smallest angle. We first mark the smallest angle in a pie diagram, which is others, and then we move on to the bigger area, and the remaining area would be assigned to the biggest of this. Now again, this was a case where percentage was given. There could be a case where values are given. So if there is a value that is given, what I do is I do a calculation where I find out the value of the region divided by the total value that is there, multiplied by 360 degrees, and that gives me the value for each of the sections to be represented on a pie diagram. So those are some of the basic techniques of understanding the diagrams that are there, and those, as we discussed, are the line diagrams, bar diagrams, multiple and compound bar, then we have the pie diagram, and a combination of line and bar, which is very important, where you have two y-axis that represent two different concepts, as we have already discussed.